Welcome back to The Deep Dive. And if you're joining us here on F1 Blogs, a massive welcome to you too. Today, we are diving headfirst into the British Grand Prix. What a race. We've got some great analysis from an F1 Blogs video transcript, and it paints this picture of a race that was, well, less about pure pace and more about luck, strategy, and dealing with that classic British weather. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission, like always, is to pull out the really key insights from this deep dive, give you that shortcut to understanding what really happened at Silverstone. And we'll focus on this fascinating split. We saw teams often having one driver thrilled and the other were not so much.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how the F1 Blogs analysis really nailed the feeling of the race. That unpredictability, especially Silverstone, it always delivers something, doesn't it? The commentary kept coming back to this idea of an unequal distribution of luck. Almost like you said, 50-50, looked up and down the grid, and nearly every team had one driver with a smile and the other just absolutely fuming. It really shows how quickly things can turn in F1, how those tiny decisions under pressure can mean everything.
That 50-50 idea is the perfect way to look at it. So let's start there, team by team. First up, McLaren. For Lando Norris, the F1 Blogs analysis framed it as just pure joy, right? His first win at home. Makes him the 13th British driver to win the British Grand Prix. Plus, McLaren gets another double podium, 2 in a row. You could almost feel the relief and happiness the analysis described. Just a huge moment.
Oh, absolutely huge. But then you look at the other McLaren, Oscar Piastri, and the transcript really picked up on his anger, refusing to speak to the media afterwards. That's not like him at all. He's usually, the Iceman, isn't he? Cool, calm. But clearly not that day. He was furious. And it came out later, that 10-second penalty for driving erratically.
Right, that penalty. What exactly happened there?
Well, the data, the analysis, showed his brake pressure went way over 55 bar. And the deceleration, it was described as savage. He went from something like 230 kilometers per hour down to just 51, really sudden. The stewards called it dangerous, and yeah, it cost him big time.
Wow, so not just a minor error.
No, not at all. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it shows you just how fine the margins are. Every single input, every bit of data is scrutinized like crazy. What might feel like instinct to the driver can look like a dangerous move on telemetry. It really hammers home the pressure they're under, that constant microscopic review.
That is such a key point. It's not just driving fast, it's managing everything, knowing every twitch is being watched. Okay, moving from frustration to, well, absolute jubilation. Sauber. The F1 Blogs commentary really celebrated Nico Hülkenberg, and rightly so. He finally did it after, 240 Grand Prix starts. That unwanted record, gone. First podium. And what a drive. The analysis called it memorable, error-free. Perfectly executed.
Yeah, and for Sauber, you could see what it meant. They celebrated that third place like a win, and honestly, the analysis suggested it kind of was for them. Their first podium since Japan back in 2014. It's a big boost for them in the standings, too. It gets them much closer to winning.
So with Hülkenberg finally getting that podium, does this signal a real step up for Sauber, or was it more about Nico having a perfect day in chaotic conditions?
That's a really good question. While Nico was celebrating, his teammate, Gabriel Bortoleto, had a much tougher time. He had an early mistake, went off track. But the F1 Blogs analysis made sure to point out, this one race doesn't really spoil his rookie season. He's still really good overall. As for Sauber's pace, the feeling from the commentary was it was more about Hülkenberg driving perfectly, grabbing the opportunity, maybe a bit of good strategy in the chaos. Not necessarily a huge jump in the car's fundamental performance, though obviously they'll take it. What's also interesting, tying back to that 50-50 theme, is how Nico's podium apparently made some other drivers and team quite frustrated.
How so?
Well, they saw it was possible to break into that top group, beyond the usual top 4 teams. But it was Hülkenberg who did it, not them. It left a few people thinking, what if? What could we have done differently?
Right, that what if feeling. It perfectly captures F1. Okay, next team. Ferrari. And talk about internal struggles. The F1 Blogs analysis highlighted Lewis Hamilton getting his best result for Ferrari, 4th place. Yet, he was clearly struggling with the car. He actually called it undrivable near the end. But despite that, the commentary said he gave Charles Leclerc a huge lesson, finding pace, sometimes almost a second faster. Shows his quality, doesn't it?
It really does. Incredible ability to wring performance out of a difficult car. But then Charles Leclerc, oh dear. The analysis called it the worst race of his life, just mistake after mistake. Off-track moments, errors described as desperate driving. And it's such a turnaround from Saturday, where he was apparently furious with himself after qualifying, calling himself, well, not very complimentary things, to then have Sunday be even worse. It was a stark contrast to Hamilton, especially as they both seemed to have issues with the car. The F1 blog's view painted a really clear picture. One driver fighting through it, the other really struggling to cope that day.
A really stark contrast, yeah. And the split fortunes continued down the grid. Mercedes. George Russell's weekend, according to the F1 blogs piece, just didn't hit the heights expected, especially after getting pole there last year. Mercedes seemed to struggle a bit more in the cooler temperatures than maybe predicted. He still scored points, but I felt like a bit of a missed chance for them at home.
Yeah, a bit underwhelming perhaps. And for his teammate Antonelli, the commentary described a really tough weekend overall. He was already carrying a penalty from the race before, and then in the British GP itself, he had that tangle with Hattar. That collision forced him to retire, just one of those weekends where nothing goes right, you know? More bad luck for him, couldn't show his pace.
Definitely. Okay, let's talk Aston Martin. Because here, that contrast between teammates was almost comical. Maximum joy for Lance Stroll, but maximum anger, it seems, for Fernando Alonso. His radio message, highlighted in the F1 blog's transcript, was pretty blunt, wasn't it? Something like, the team never gets his strategy right. You can just hear the frustration.
Yeah. Oh, you absolutely can. And when you look at the details the F1 blog's analysis brought out, you understand why he was so mad. Stroll's race sort of hinged on that early-ish stop for soft tires. Looked risky, with heavy rain supposedly coming. But he managed to get some brilliant laps out of them before the proper rain arrived, and that vaulted him up the order. Great call, or maybe lucky timing.
So what went wrong for Alonso then?
Total opposite. He was apparently getting mixed messages. First, told to stay out, wait for the rain, which didn't come straight away. Then, when the rain did ease off later, they called him in for softs, but way too early, like 4 laps too soon, according to the analysis. The track just wasn't ready. It reminded me of Joe Russell's comment mentioned in the analysis about being brave versus suicidal on those kinds of calls.
4 laps. That's huge in changing conditions.
Exactly. And this raises an important question. How do teams handle these situations? So much data, but so much uncertainty. How much does just a few laps difference cost? For Alonso, it cost him any chance of points. Left him furious, way down the order. A real strategic blunder.
It's fascinating how those calls unfold. You wonder how much is data, how much is gut feel, especially with someone like Alonso giving feedback. And this theme, this dichotomy, it just kept rolling. Williams next. Good news for Alex Albon, scoring points again. But for Logan Sargent, more frustration. The pace seems to be there, but...
Yeah, things just didn't click for him again. The F1 blog's analysis pointed to 2 main problems for Logan. First, strategy again. He was apparently called in too late for tires. Maybe a couple of laps after Alonso went in too early. The suggestion was a braver, earlier call might have worked better for him. And second, he had that collision with Leclerc, described as rough, damaged his car, and did any hope of points right there.
So Williams maybe not quite nailing the strategy calls across the board.
It seems that way, at least for Sargent's side. The analysis suggested they weren't extremely fine on strategy with him. His speed is often there, you see glimpses, but he just can't seem to get a smooth weekend together, avoid those incidents or strategy hiccups. It's tough.
Definitely tough. Okay, let's zoom out a bit now. Think about the British Grand Prix as an event. Second year running, we've had really tricky weather, making things exciting or maybe stressful, depending on your view. And here's where it gets really interesting. The F1 blogs piece mentioned it was the 75th anniversary of the very first F1 race back in 1950, held at Silverstone. Apparently back then it wasn't a huge deal, largely unnoticed. Contrast that with this year.
Massive difference, isn't it?
Huge. 500,000 fans over the weekend, packed grandstands, incredible atmosphere, and then capped off by a British driver winning for a British team. It just shows how far F1 has come in terms of popularity and spectacle. It's incredible.
Absolutely. And thinking about the season context, this race lands us just past the halfway mark. 12 races still to go, but the championship fight. Only 8 points separating the leaders. It's incredibly tight. Every single point now feels massive. The tension is just going to ramp up and up.
Definitely. And what about team development? Any hints in the analysis?
It's just a little. Yeah. The F1 blogs analysis mentioned Aston Martin showing small but positive evolution, maybe some minor upgrades coming for Belgium. On the other hand, Williams seemed to be facing challenges keeping up as others improve. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, The development race in the second half, combined with this tight championship, is going to be crucial, especially for, our guys, Carlos and Fernando, looking to make progress.
Absolutely. So wrapping up this deep dive on the British Grand Prix, the big takeaways really are about strategy, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
How critical it is, how fine that line is between getting it right and getting it disastrously wrong. And that human element, the pressure, the luck, it's what makes F1 so endlessly fascinating. It's never just about the car.
Never just the car. And it leaves you with that thought, doesn't it? This raises an important question. How much of any race result is actually down to the driver's skill versus those calls from the pit wall versus just sheer luck? And what does this race, this 50-50 split we saw, really tell us about the risks and rewards teams are constantly weighing up, trying to outsmart each other, trying to outsmart the weather? It's a high-wire act.
It truly is a brilliant summary. And that's all the time we have for this deep dive into the British Grand Prix. We hope this gives you a richer understanding of everything that went down at Silverstone. Thanks so much for joining us here on F1 Blogs. Remember to hit that subscribe button on the channel so you don't miss our next deep dive into the amazing world of Formula One.